Hi, my name is Jill. You are here at Road Culture Rules, and I wanted to ask the question today. I've been learning all this stuff, so my brain is on fire. Are the differences between men and women more or less or at all important, especially when we're post-children or we're post-50 or we're moving into that second half of life? And the reason I wanted to ask that question is I have just been immersed in all this information, too much to put forward in one video, but I want to start breaking it out as I'm processing it in my head. We are back on the inner journey, but it's really important because can we now still take that journey together, or are we meant to go separate ways? We're going to talk about that in just a moment, but first we're going to take a deep breath, inhale, hold for 4, exhale, and see you on the other side. So, you've seen me make a couple videos about men, and I just have this need to either understand men or talk to men. I don't understand what's going on with that, but I'm starting to get a little bit of a clearer picture. And in the process of that, I've been listening to all this information on the biological differences, the emotional differences, the mental differences. Interestingly, I have not heard a lot about the spiritual differences, but we may be talking about that on a different day. And is it important, and especially is it important to your post-50 life? And obviously there's tremendous importance when you talk about having children, because children need both male and female influences in their life to be the healthiest and happiest. It doesn't mean you have to be married to a man and woman, but you really, children need both because they take from both. But once the children have sort of moved out of the home, if you chose to do that, how important? And while I don't have all the answers, one of the reasons I find that question really interesting is that some of the statistics I've heard in terms of when divorce and relationships started to end, and I didn't know that, but 80% of women are the ones that really initiate divorce. Who knew? So it's really, I think, women that are most unhappy. The other statistic I saw was that in terms of would you remarry your spouse, 50% of men said yes, but way less women said yes. And so it seems to me, maybe, that we as women have a much more complicated view of the male-female relationship than men do. So I think that's the first thing that I've noticed that's important to acknowledge. And the other really important thing that I just learned, well, there's two other things that I really want to talk about in terms of differences that were kind of shocking to me. The first one is a physiological difference in that how differently men and women process stress. And I think we all know that when men get stressed, they like to retreat, and women, don't necessarily do that. So that creates conflict in a relationship or at work, those kinds of things. But I think just hearing the physiological differences about how the male nervous system gets overloaded or stressed out in a different way than a woman's does, that's really important, because one of the biggest contributing factors to the problems that we have with each other is how we handle stress, what we interpret as stressful, and how we manage that. And so I don't have, like brilliant, wonderful answers, but the reason I'm bringing this up is because what I'm trying to understand is a process. So oftentimes, we want to just get the bottom line right and move on. So let's do a little video, let's read a book, let's get to the bottom line, let's keep moving. And like life itself, it's an onion and it peels back in layers. And while I have a really clear vision of where I want to be in terms of the bigger mission to all this, how we all get there, how I get there with you, that's still in a constant state of evolvement. And so, where the end place is, I've talked about survival and legacy being, the practical things about survival, which I think I'd put under the strength category. And then the more long-term, bigger vision, purpose stuff would be legacy, which I see more as love and strength. Those are my two hardcore things that I am really focused on. There's still all this other stuff that we need to figure out in our way there. And part of that is, I think for me at this point in time, how do we move that forward? I think part of my initiating all this is that, again, my statistics and my demographics haven't changed. It's still more men, about 65% men to 35% women watching me. So something is going on there other than just the YouTube demographic. And so I want to respond to that. Like, what do I have that's of value? And all I can really, what I'm getting is I can't do much other than share my own perspective on this as I start to understand things. Because the other thing, the second thing that was like huge, and I've heard this before, but I just heard it again in a brand new way, is that this is going to be so hard for women, is that men want respect more than they want love. And I think as a woman, we don't even know how to process that information. And the thing that made it more hearable for me was that the getting of respect feels like being loved. And I know that, a very basic communication issue between anybody, male or female or whatever version, is that we love people the way we want to, we give love the way we want to receive it. And so women, we give what we want to receive, and men do too. And of course the problem is we're not giving each other what we need. And so just those two little things have begun to allow me to shift some of my thinking and some of my, how do I want to move this whole thing forward? And so, is it important for, as we get older, to have, do we need male-female relationships? Do we need romantic relationships? And I talked a little bit about that before, but what the new thought is that's coming into my head is that you need more traditional biology-based male-female relationships in terms of raising children, because there's a huge biological factor that goes into making a baby and raising children. There's a lot that's going on there that's very biology-based. There's a physiological issue happening where, just as a very practical level, women, we can only have babies to a certain age. So you can pretend like there's no biological differences, but there are. And so that makes a lot of sense. But after, parenting and procreation are taken out of that, is it important? Are we getting something from it? And what my aha was around that is yes. And it's important not to have romantic relationships for the sake of not being alone. But what I've talked about before is part of the work, I think, once kids are out of the house and the family days are no longer the primary focus, is one, balancing the masculine and feminine within yourself, and two, we can balance that also with a male-female partner or a relationship partner, because three, we have to balance that out at the bigger level. And so that makes a lot of sense to me. So there's three levels. There's what's going on inside of you. There's what's going on in an intimate relationship, because you just get a lot more work done when you're intimately involved with somebody. And then there's the bigger picture. And I think it's hard to do all three at the same time. And so I'm going to do this in a separate video, but I've just had like this huge aha moment about really why I've had to be alone for the last I do think it's been 12 years. I can't even believe it's been that long. I made a very conscious decision to not be in partnership with anybody. And I have had like this huge aha moment about why that was something I needed to do, and what this whole journey has facilitated in me to bring me one step closer to my bigger mission. And my bigger mission isn't me, it isn't man, woman, it's the big love thy neighbor version of why we're here. And so again, I'm going to talk about that in a separate video, but I wanted to ask that question: is there value in romantic male-female relationships? There is, but it isn't something that everybody needs to do all the time for every minute of their life. So I think that part of our separating and coming back together with multiple people, with no people, or with one person, that is our own personal work that we need to do, which doesn't have anything to do with the more global moving of civilization. I think the global moving of civilization realization about that is that we needed to separate and have the ability to separate so that we can come back together in a new way. And I think that's what's happening. Listening to some of the especially men talk about the new communication skills between men and women, it's got me very excited Again, one video, one idea. So that's just what I wanted to bring up today. So my answer is yes, there is value in romantic relationships, but not to the exclusion of all the other work that we're being asked to do. And so there's three things: the male-female balance within ourselves, the male-female balance with another person, and the male-female balance globally, society is large, because we need both. We need love and we need strength. And just one more thing, because in my understanding is that love without strength creates victims. Strength without love really creates perpetrators, right? And the hero, the true hero's journey, the hero is when you have love and strength, because you want both. You can't have one without the other and have a balanced self, a balanced relationship, or a balanced society. That makes total sense to me. So leave your comments below if that makes any sense to you. We're going to keep going, and with that, we're going to say before we leave, I hope you take one more deep breath for the road, as I hope you will rise with the sun in your eyes, love in your heart, feet firmly on the ground, because we are walking on Survival Road, one step at a time. I'm excited. I have so much going on in my head. I can't wait to tell you. Very excited. But until then, I'll see you next time. Reaching out to a future life you're sure